I want to talk now about U.S. plans in Iraq, and I want to give you a brief overview of what it looks like, because Bush, of course, already a ways back said, well, he'd be leaving this situation for some future president to take care of. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean even the next U.S. president, because there's no talk of withdrawal from the Cheney administration, because there are no plans for U.S. withdrawal from Iraq. And I want to start by talking about the so-called U.S. embassy that is being built as we speak right now inside the Green Zone in central Baghdad. This embassy, the contract for it was awarded to a very corrupt Kuwaiti company for $592 million. When you think about embassy, when I do, I always would think that it's kind of like a smallish, maybe 2 or 3 story white building. They have a gardener, they have a cook. You lose your passport, you go there and you get another passport, or you get new pages added into your passport if you travel a whole lot, that kind of thing. Well, this embassy in Baghdad consists of an area the size of the Vatican City. It's 21 buildings. The walls are reinforced 2.5 times their normal standards. And when it's finished, there's going to be room for over 8,000 government officials. It has a gymnasium. It will have the largest swimming pool in the country, a barber, a beauty shop, yoga studios, first-run movie cinema, food court, and commissary. There's a large-scale barracks for troops, a school, probably not for Iraqis, locker rooms, a warehouse, vehicle maintenance garage, 6 apartment buildings with 619 one-bedroom units. And when it's finished, the site will be 2/3 of the area of the National Mall in Washington, D.C. Unlike Iraq's infrastructure that I talked about earlier, this construction project is happening right on time. So when you're in Baghdad and you can look across the Tigris River, the Green Zone is surrounded by 15-foot high concrete blast walls. And you can look up above those walls and there's these towering construction cranes, the totally stereotypical construction crane you'd see at work at a big building in downtown someplace here. There's several of those and they're watching these foreign workers while unemployment is now still well up over 50% in Iraq, and Iraqis are watching these Kuwaitis and Sri Lankans and other slave labor constructing this so-called embassy right in the middle of Baghdad. So you can imagine what that does for their sentiment about the occupation. Another sign of future U.S. plans in Iraq are the bases being built. One of these bases, just to give you an idea, is called Camp Anaconda. It's in Balad, just to the north of Baghdad. And at this air base alone, there's 20,000 soldiers, less than 1,000 of whom ever leave the base. There's 2 base exchanges where they sell the latest high-tech gear, CDs, brand new DVDs. I mean, like when they come out here, they come out at these bases. One of the managers at one of these base exchanges said he was very proud to announce that they were selling 15 televisions a day to soldiers. There's plans for more air-conditioned troop quarters there, as well as for them to get internet, cable television, and overseas phones. There's thousands of civilian contractors at this one base alone, so many that they have their own little section of apartment buildings on the base that they call KBR land, as in Kellogg, Brown, and Root. This hospital at this one base alone conducts 400 surgeries a month on injured troops, just on this one base. An Air Force official there claimed that his runway was the second busiest in the world. I don't know if that's true. That means this would be the busiest airport in the world behind Chicago. The base has over 250 of its own aircraft, so that means helicopters like Apaches, Chinooks, F-16s, unmanned military surveillance drones. They have lavish meals served from third country nationals. That's what they basically call the slave labor in Iraq, which is primarily composed of people from India, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. basically just because it's better for the profit margin. They serve very lavish meals. Troops eat well now. When they go to Iraq, if they're at a base like this, it used to be they would lose 15 pounds a tour. Now they gain 15 pounds a tour because they'll serve a meal. Maybe it's a turkey dinner. If they don't want that, they can go to the sandwich bar. There's a big salad bar. There's ice cream. You name it. They're definitely being fed well. There's nothing you can be critical of about that, aside from what Halliburton's being paid to do it. But if troops don't want those meals, on this base alone, they can instead go to the 24-hour Burger King, the Pizza Hut, the Popeyes, the Subway sandwich shop, and then they can wash that down with a latte from Starbucks. This base also has its own swimming pool, a first-run movie theater, and a Hertz rent-a-car. A Hertz rent-a-car. Probably not to go to Fallujah. Drive around the base. There's a 10-mile-an-hour speed limit, so I guess they're really bored. I don't know. But remember those companies. There's several other gigantic bases like Camp Anaconda. For example, Camp Victory near Baghdad Airport, when it's complete, it's going to be twice the size of Camp Bondsteel in Kosovo, which prior to the bases being built in Iraq was one of the largest overseas bases built by the U.S. since Vietnam. And it's hard to say exactly how many of these bases there are. Speculation has been as low as 10, as high as 16. And it's hard to say because, like Camp Victory near the airport, well, there's also Camp Victory North. And they've grown together. And the bases are so big that you can check all this out online. You can go to the DoD website. And several months ago, there was a photo of a soldier who decided to do his own Ironman triathlon on one of these bases. So an Ironman triathlon means you run a marathon, you bike about 140 miles, and he obviously would spend a lot of time swimming multiple laps in the swimming pool. But there's a picture of him on his bike way out in the middle of nowhere on this base within the walls doing his own Ironman triathlon. And so they're pretty big bases. That's my point. So there's no timetable from the Bush Kabul. Why? Even surprisingly reported by the New York Times on April 1903, this is 10 days after the fall of Baghdad, U.S. military officials said, quote, "There will probably never be an announcement of permanent stationing of troops. Not permanent basing, but permanent access is all that is required," according to the military officials. Note that it is also not forbidden in the Iraqi constitution would make it illegal for a foreign power, i.e. the United States, to have access to military bases within Iraq. So it's all in the semantics, it's all in what words you want to choose, but it's not permanent bases, it's permanent access. And permanent access is what they have. Another clue as to their future strategy, the 2002 National Security Strategy of the United States. Again, you can look all this up online, and I encourage you to do so. It makes for very interesting reading. Quote, "Our forces will be strong enough to dissuade potential adversaries from pursuing a military buildup in hopes of surpassing or equaling the power of the United States. To accomplish this, the U.S. will require bases and stations within and beyond Western Europe and Northeast Asia." But a segue from that real quick, as most of you may know, there are, admitted by the DoD, 725 U.S. military bases around the globe. In Japan alone, there's 100 U.S. military bases or installations. In South Korea alone, there's another 100 U.S. military bases and installations. U.S. policymakers have replaced the Cold War with the long war for global empire and unchallenged U.S. military hegemony. Here's another clue. There's a military document called Joint Vision 2020, as in the year 2020. Again, I encourage you to Google this and have a read. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff's vision here is, quote, "dedicated individuals and innovative organizations transforming the joint force of the 21st century to achieve, quote, full spectrum dominance," that's in bold, "persuasive in peace, decisive in war, preeminent in any form of conflict." That last bit's in italics.